Record. And let's get started because it's 9:30. Oh, if I can get up. Come on, body. So bring your body with you, whatever, whatever state it's in. And we will, let's get into something like this. Cat's already attacked the mat this morning. It's going well, it's going well. So let's start by laying with the knees bent like we usually do. Probably slightly more for me than it is for you, but if you have been looking forwards and down quite a lot this week, then this is the time to put your body back into its appropriate shape. So I wanted to go back and retouch on the fundamentals of footwork, because we want to be thinking about our feet, and making sure that they're the foundation that we need for the rest of our body. So just allowing your body to come down to ground, just letting the bones rest in the hammocks of the fascia. Let the long arm bones come back through the shoulders into the shoulder blades. And you can just mess around with the back of the body. We tend to fold round the front of the body. So taking that time to drop back and unfold, reconnect with the ground. You know, we spend so much time sort of 2 millimeters off the ground, or pushing the floor away is the other one. So we just let the body come back into its own alignment. Can we leave it alone to just find the ground? The spinal curves will naturally sort themselves out, but we're thinking about the heaviness of the sit bones. And that uninhibited lumbar curve. So we've got space between the low spine and the ground. We find the smile at the base of the back of the ribs and let that drop back. Front of the ribs can drop back into the back of the ribs. If it's nice to use the hands to encourage that, then you can. We're looking for that broadness. Across the back of the chest. And that's fundamental to allowing the shoulders to come away from the ears. You know, we've got a stiffness to the ribs that is useful for us to work with a lot of the time, so that it doesn't become overly stiff. So can we let the front of the ribs sink back? Can we let the breath come out underneath the shoulder blades? And can we feel a broadness to the ribs again? Because when the arms are on the back of the body and kind of wrapping around the shoulders and pulling the front of the body inwards and downwards, this is an opportunity for us to reverse that and sort of just unfurl a little bit and come back into that broad, soft space on the front of the chest. The collarbones can relax and let go. And we just start to notice whether one shoulder blade needs to be a little bit heavier on the ground, or whether one of the hips needs to be a little bit heavier on the ground. We start to go through this rebalancing process. One foot heavier than the other. And we can give the knees a little wave, which helps to just soften the hip flexors at the front. Soften the tummy at the front. Soften the well of the throat. And we can just roll the head from one side to the other with the heavy, heavy ears. Let the eyes sink back. And the tongue can sink back. So if we let the hands just rest on the front of the thighs, we can start to look at the feet. And we can just pick the toes up and spread them and bring them back down onto the ground. And just in our mind's eye, we can just, for me, it's nicer to close the eyes, but you find what's right for you. You want to feel your feet on the ground. You can smush them from side to side and backwards and forwards a little bit to just get the sole of the foot awake. Some people at the moment on Instagram are calling this foot wiping. It's a new phrase, but I'm putting it in the box with sleep hygiene because it just sounds a bit more like a bodily function, and I'm just not sure I'm okay with that. So we're just, but you can feel it when you rub the sole of the foot on the ground, it becomes tingly, it wakes up. So this is where your sticky mat might work against you. So if you've got a bit of carpet underneath you to the side of your sticky mat, but it's interesting to let your feet feel the different textures. If you have textures available to you, you might have a sticky mat and a hard floor, and you might have a sticky mat and a carpet, but just noticing the sensitivity of your feet. You know, there's a ludicrous amount of nerve endings in the soles of your feet. So can we let the toes start to identify the texture of the whatever it is underneath you? And then the balls of the feet, same process. You know, what does it feel like? Is it rumply? Is it cool? Is it warm? All of that stuff will just start to become receptive to the feedback that is coming from our feet. And what you might find is in that tingliness starts to appear where we're rubbing the feet, that tingliness appears in the parts of the foot that are very easily connecting to the ground. So you might find that there's parts of your feet that aren't getting tingly. Might be one foot that's more tingly than the other, depending on the weight distribution that we have. And it can feel quite relaxing when we're doing this with our feet. It feels quite soothing, perhaps, when we're doing this with our feet. So we're bringing the hands onto the front of the thighs. We're going to keep the knees as still as we can, and we're rolling the feet onto their outer edges, and then rolling through the center of the foot back in onto the inner edges of the feet. That's right, Mary. So we're getting that space at the ankle, and we can feel that maybe the bone in the calf is free to move. We might feel that up in the knee. There's definitely some slide and glide going on in the calves on the back of the lower leg. You might feel the rotation in the thigh bones. And that very minor rotation in the thigh bones allows the pelvis to become free. So you might find that the sacrum starts to get heavy after a little while and starts to roll away towards the heels a little bit more, that kind of drawbridge of the sacrum. So from here, we're just going to let the heavy elbows just plant into the sides of the body. And we're just going to take one of the heels and just let the foot slide away. So nice heavy leg that's extending out from the underside of the waist, underside of the ribs. We'll do that with the other side. So with the heels, we're just going to do a little nervous system tap. So all we're doing is we're moving our toes backwards and forwards. And this is where your sticky mat actually works to your advantage now, because you can stick the heels to the mat. And all we do is just woggle the body, it's very technical, woggle the body up and down. So you want the skin on the back of your body to move. it feels like it's becoming loose on the back of the body. So again, when we're doing this, it might feel a bit funny initially. We can let the backs of the hands come down onto the ground, and we're just noticing, is one foot waggling harder than the other? Can we make them equal? Can we notice where the skin on the back of the body is easy to move, free to move? And are there places on the back of the body where the skin not so keen? And we're just looking for, what you'll find is it's progressive. So initially the tissues are a little bit stiff and a little bit sticky. But if we stay here and keep waggling the feet, it will move all the way up the body. So, you'll find that the glutes on the back of the body start to get unstuck and move. You might find that the organs in the pelvis start to slop about a little bit. The organs in the tummy and the underside of the ribs all start to move. And then, eventually we start to get to shoulders, backs of the arms, all the way down into the back of the hands. And eventually the back of the head, the scalp fascia will start to move. And this is great for nervous systems. So if you're feeling a little under pressure at the moment, if you've got small people who are going through exams, if you're in them yourself, if you're dealing with stressful situations at the moment, this is a cracking one to do at the end of the day, right before bed. It's a good one to do in the morning. You can make it quite vigorous and rigorous. And it's a great way to wake yourself up in the morning. So if you're feeling a bit fatigued, a bit sluggish in the morning, it's a great way to get started. And if you're getting to the end of the day and you're feeling a bit frazzled, this is a great one to do before you start your bedtime routine. Remember that nice 20 to 30 minutes break that you give yourself to let your brain and your body know that it's time to get to bed, rather than put the phone down, clean teeth, throw yourself into bed and then wonder why we don't go to sleep. So we're just gently going to allow our rocking to come to stop. If your body wants to. If it doesn't, you can keep going a bit longer. And we're just noticing, so let the body flop completely, and the feet might flop a little bit more out to the sides. And again, we're just staying with those sensations. To me, they feel fuzzy. To you, they might feel a little bit different. But just notice, because we've shaken everything up, just letting everything just settle itself. It's good. So we're just bringing the feet back in. So edge of the foot, which is the strongest part of the foot, you can slide up your mat and bring the feet back in. We can find the feet. Just going to let the arms go up over the top of the body. Let the long arm bones drop back through their sockets. We're going to breathe in and take the arms up to the sky. And a nice breath out. Drops the arms back through the sockets. We can do this once more. And dropping the arms. Teaches the brain that the arms can land the drop, that there's a foundation for them to fall into. Once more, just breathing in. And the breath out that drops the arm. We're going to let the index fingers lead the arms up over the head. Keep the ribs back in towards the spine without crushing the low spine. And then our arms can come out and round and down. And we're just going to make 3 circles in our own time. So notice where the sticky bits are. Again, if you've been staring at the screen for quite a long time, you might find that the stretch is in the pectorals on the front. We're letting the shoulder blades come together on the back of the body. We want to reset the rhomboids. We spend a lot of time with the arms out of their sockets and round the front of the body. And just final circle. This is good. So we're just going to come over onto whichever side is comfortable for you. And we're going to find our way up to standing. Okay, so just finding your way up to standing. Let's do that. And we're just, again, just stay with any sensations that you might be feeling. And we're finding I'm glad May's here with me, because it's, oh, well, maybe not. Because a little bit like the cat padding the cushions, and just like we were doing when we were laying on our back, we're thinking about, and if it's useful to keep the hands around the knees, then you can. We're thinking about those 4 points of the feet. So we've got big toe and little toe joints, and then we've got the inside of the heel and the outside of the heel. And we want to have the aim of the game is that we've got feet that move independently of shins, shins that move independently of thighs, and thighs that move independently of the hip. And that is what fires our central core system. So when we're thinking about things like flat feet, or if you're feeling like your ankles are falling inwards, these are all indicators. The feet are telling you everything that's going on in the body up above it. So, and it's really important that we've got the range. So we're keeping the knee as still as we can to roll the foot onto the outer edge and roll onto the inner edge. And it's a practice, not a perfect. I've done this a couple of times before. So for me, it wasn't easy like this. Once upon a time, when my teacher taught it to me, my feet did not look like this at all. But what we're looking for is, there are joints in here. The restriction is tough connective tissue. And there's a nice little joint just at the top of your shin bones, and you can follow that up and find it for yourself. But there's a little joint where the shin bones come together, and that can get a little bit stiff and sticky. And when it's stiff and sticky, it will inhibit the foot underneath. It will inhibit the ankle. So, and again, we know that the retinacular at the ankle can get a little bit stiff and sticky because it's dense connective tissue. So we've got to think about our ability to roll the feet outwards and to roll the feet inwards particularly, because again, we've got a lot of dense connective tissue here on the underside of the ankle bone. And the tendency is, because the inner ankle and the inner knee and the inner groins, they all connect together and they come up and they fire into, I might have a picture somewhere. Thought I put them somewhere. There they are. Fires through the groins, and it comes in through the hip and connects into those really important deep postural muscles on the inside of the spine, the inside of the low spine. So if they are not doing, like I say, feet are indicators, they're a symptom, not a cause. So we can see that if these big muscles on the inside of the spine, there's little lots all laying on the inside of the spine here. So if these aren't doing what they should be doing, or if they're too long, we can see that that's going to come all the way down that line into your medial malleolus, so in inner ankle bone, and the arch of the foot. Which is why for me, you know, flat feet aren't really a thing. Flat feet are a symptom, they're not a cause. Flat feet tell me everything about your central core system. Yeah, or if the inner ankle is dropping in, it means that these muscles up in here are lining the inside of the spine, low spine mostly, and the whole lot's capped off by the diaphragm, is not doing what it should be doing. So we want to go back to our core work. But your core can only fire, here's the paradox, your core can only fire if your feet are connecting with the floor properly. Because if we're not getting the feedback from the foot's gone to sleep, because we take our bodies to the gym from sort of the neck downwards, the ankles upwards and the wrists inwards. The other bits don't really get a look in. So we want to be working with our feet a lot, because when our feet present to the ground properly, then they will come through and they'll fire the central core system better. Hopefully that all makes sense.
Can I ask a question?
Thank you, Sarah Jane. I've got a double thumbs up there. That's happy Monday. Sorry.
Can I ask a question, please?
Of course you can, Margaret.
To do with my knee.
Yes.
Oops, there.
Oh, hang on. Yep.
There.
Yes.
And I get this excruciating sensation in my knee there at times when I do certain things.
Yes.
For instance, when I go down on my knees,
yes,
I will get this shooting pain there.
Yes.
And there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with my knee, but I don't know why I'm getting that pain.
No, so knees are very often knees are a symptom, not a cause. It's a great question, Margaret. Is that, you'll have to remind me, is that your replacement side or is that the other side?
The opposite side.
It's the opposite side.
Yes.
Okay. So when we are, sorry, the cogs are turning. One moment, caller. Bear with me one moment. I'll just check that for you. So, yeah, knees are I should have worn my shorts today, shouldn't I? Knees are complex things. We've got lots of ligamentous material here. So in the case of, in your case, Margaret, it may be that there's more weight coming through this side than the other because of the intervention on the opposite side. But if we just get my thoughts in order. So when we're working through the foot in this way, if it feels stiff and sticky on this outer side here, we want to find this long little toe side and just feel, we want to notice, actually, let's do this together. Let's do this with our eyes shut. So just set your feet. If it's nice to close the eyes, or you can just look down at the floor. But again, just moving the feet backwards and forwards on the surface underneath you. So one foot and then the other foot. Don't you dare. Somebody's very mischievous this morning. And then when we bring the feet back to center, just noticing the bits of the feet that feel tingly. Does one foot feel more tingly than the other? And are there parts of the feet that didn't get to be on the ground, and where can we change that? So again, we're looking to find the softness of the knee, because what we feel is if we bend the knee just a little bit and bring the body weight forwards into the center of the foot, what we feel is that the shin then can drop back into the heel. And if we bend the knees, if you find that your knees have a tendency to lock out, if we bend the knees just a little bit more and lift and drop the heel a little bit, and we keep finding the feet. Go forwards to the toes, find the balls of the feet. And then you can drop back into the heels. If it's nice to hold the back of a chair or a bit of sofa or a bit of wall to steady yourself, then do. Because what we're asking is for the leg to reconnect to the inside of the pelvis. So can we leave the tail, sacrum, to be invited into the low spine? And it might be nice to get the hands around the pelvis, because we're feeling that inwards and upwards draw on the front. We're feeling like the sacrum can be invited into the low spine. So the whole lot's coming into this waist that is now lifting. It's going up underneath the diaphragm so that the legs then are free to hang down. So if we come back to that, come back to the knees again, leave the feet on the floor this time, can we wave the knees in and out? And what we start to feel is the muscles on the inside of the hips. And we might start to feel the tummy muscles and central core system, because we're feeling that everything can go in and up so that legs can hang down. So keep coming back to the feet, keep releasing the knees. You'll find that this will start to go up into the hip, and we start to find space between the hip, between the this one, the innominate bone. Mickey Mouse ears bone. Can we have space between that and the top of the thigh? And we're looking for freedom and space at each of those joints. And as each of those joints start to give a little bit more space back into the system, muscles have to work to replace that. You know, we stand quite heavily on the bones. Gary Carter says we hang off the bones, and actually it creates great wear to the joints. And then, of course, the muscles go to sleep. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So we want to keep coming back to the foot. Foot gets pulled down into the ground, makes space in the ankle. Heel gets pulled down into the ground, opens up the back of the knee. So we get space in the back of the knee, and that space in the back of the knee, when the heel pulls down, you'll feel that in the front of the groins, front of the tummy. Maybe we're here a little bit. As the heel pulls down, the front of the hip opens, pelvis starts to shift forward, and you'll feel that in the obliques. And again, back into the transverse abs just above the pubic bone. Very, you know, these muscles don't get used so much because we can stand into the legs and then we stick some arms on it and the back goes nice and flat. So we can want to keep coming back into that active standing. Changes the way that we walk, because when we keep bringing the feet into the ground, this is where our barefoot shoes or shoes with a little less sole serve us quite well, because we want to be able to feel the ground. We have issues with these, you know, thick-soled shoes now. They call them hotters, have got a lot to answer for with their Velcro, so you don't have to bend down to get to your feet anymore, and you know, all of that stuff. But the thicker the sole of the shoe, the bigger the disconnect. And if your brain isn't getting the information back from the foot that it needs, it's like us trying to pick up a cup of tea with a boxing glove on. We're just not getting the feedback that we require. And of course, picking up cups of tea in the brain world is more dangerous than putting your feet on the floor. But all it can do is brace. That's the only message it has. If it's not getting that feedback from the floor, if it's not getting feedback about how hot the cup of tea is, how heavy it is, and we're going to spill it all over ourselves, you can't pick up cups of tea with a boxing glove on. Even if you could, your brain wouldn't let you because it's just too dangerous. Chances of you hurting yourself or coming to harm is quite high. So the brain's going to fire everything that it's got to prevent us from doing that. It's the same thing with the feet. So that's when we start to stand into the bones, stand into the joints a bit too much. So if we take a step forwards, and again, stepping is an interesting one. Definitely should have worn the shorts today. Stepping into taking a step. We have the hands on the back of the pelvis. We want to keep the sacrum coming in. You know, the tendency to tilt under is another nice habit that we have, gives us a false idea of strength. You know, we can tilt, and you can try this for yourself. You tilt the pelvis under, pull the tummy in, the brain goes, oh yeah, it feels nice and strong. But we've immobilized the hips in doing that, and then the low spine has to take the movement load. So can we unbutton the pelvis from the top of the legs, invite the sacrum into the low spine, which initially feels a little bit unstable because we've got lots of spacious joints, but muscles have to wake up and come in to help us with this. So when we're taking a step forwards, we've interrupted the pattern we are designed to propel and keep going. So we just let the back heel just get pulled down into the ground. And then we can roll forwards onto the toes and backwards into the heel. And we're looking for a little bit of movement in the back of the pelvis. We have got shift in the sacroiliac joints a little bit. It's not massive, but it is there. And just noticing as you come forward onto that front foot, change feet if you need to, if you haven't already. Margaret definitely changing feet more often than not, so that both sides get work. So when we're here, again, what we're thinking about is, are there muscles holding on? Drop the kneecaps if you need to. Can I drop into the feet a little bit more? You know, we have a lot of the time trying to push the floor away, and that makes muscles hang on for dear life that don't need to, and other muscles that do need to work, they go to sleep. So with that back heel, as the back heel gets pulled down into the ground, can we feel that the leg can come out of the side of the waist? And for those of us that are very flexible and able to turn your knees inside out, just check that back knee and make sure that it's not locking out. We have a tendency to do. So can we feel that we're getting longer between the rib and the hip? Can we feel the inner and outer edges of the heel? Can we feel the inner and outer edges of the foot? So again, big toe joint, little toe joint. Swap over as many times as you need. Again, if you're running into the calf, can we come back into the front of the ankle? Tight calves are a thing. So can we come back into the front of the ankle, let the back of the knee just soften and open, and that will let the front of the hip soften and open. The front of the hip can come forwards a little bit, and again, it will take us back into that side of the waist, deep obliques and the inside of the hip. And we might find that one side's a little tougher than the other. And we're looking to, we can use the heel as a reference point. If we go this way, we can use the heel as a reference point. So if we pull down through the outer edge of the heel, what happens then? We might find that there's a stretch in the calf on that outer side. Same on the inside. If we feel, this one will this one do it? Yeah. If we feel that the heel is swinging in at the back, it's because we're long on the outside, short on the inside. So how does it feel if we swing the heel out so that it's level or in line with the hip? How does that feel through the muscles and through the knee? You know, it's interesting to try these different foot arrangements, heel out to the side, slightly more advanced, and check the hip on that one. But you can let the heel come in and out. Heel in is definite, well, usually, it's a sweeping generalization, usually a weapon of choice for most of us because we're too short on the inside of the legs and too short as we come into central core system, and that's your psoas, iliopsoas, and those other big postural muscles in there. And of course, we don't want psoas going to sleep, you know, and we don't want it being stood on either. And we all have a tendency for that. So noticing the difference in both sides. And again, noticing if that's a tendency for you, and it's definitely a nice tendency on my right side that I can demonstrate. You can see that medial inside ankle, inner ankle bone is quite happy to drop towards the floor, and all of a sudden the adductors have switched off and that inside will just disengage. So can we feel that on the outer side of the ankle, we can, outside of the heel, sorry, we can pull that down into the ground, and that will start to mess around with all the different components in the legs. So can we just stay there? It's a snooker ball heel, not attached to the rest of the toes. There's lots of nice, joints and connective tissue, but you've got a heel, then you've got a set of little bones, and then you've got some long toe bones. And they all want to appropriately move independently of each other. It's a rolling piece of architecture. It's not a Thunderbird foot. Don't walk like puppets. And as always, as soon as we get too enamored, we move on to the next one. So when we're thinking about front foot, something like that. When we're thinking about the front foot, we're being mindful that we're not throwing our body weight into the front. We can let the body weight come down into the front foot and pull the front foot. Remember Philip and his gravity button. We can pull that front foot down into the ground, which will fire the leg back into the central core system. It will send us in and back and up. So we're not pushing the floor away. We use gravity and the natural recoil of our connective tissue, and that will pull the back of the knee open, and it will pull the front of the hip open, and again it will take you back into those central core muscles. So if it feels good, we can take the hands and we can make that circle. I'm going to have to come in from the front because my shoulders are not happy today. So if your shoulders are not happy today, you can just make a nice circle out in front. We hold the index finger knuckle with the thumb and the index finger so that can really wrap around the back of the ribs. Arms around the back of the ribs, help the ribs to come in and up and be supported. When the arms around the front, the back of the ribs aren't supported and they fall down, and they contribute to the switching off of everything else and too much weight coming through the legs. So the arms coming back through the shoulders, shoulder blades together on the back of the body, helps to kind of pick us up from the back of the ribs and take us in and up. Lets the head come back into the gravity line as well, because the jaw slings around the back of the head and supports us in that inwards and upwards lift. So what we find is that as the arms come around the back of the ribs and the ribs can start to lift off the waist. The head comes back into the gravity line, and then that starts to take weight off the waist. And if it feels nice, the arms might float just because they're wrapping around the back here. Here's one I made earlier. Because the arms are wrapping around the back of the body here. So it pulls the ribs in and up and gives us space into the low spine. And as the low spine gets space, it takes the sacrum with it, brings that in, takes all the weight off the legs, and then we start to get this nice lift out of the feet. And lifting out of the feet gives us arches, and it lifts the inner here, inner ankle. It's called a medial malleolus. And I'm just going into exams, so I can't talk layman's terms at the moment. So the inside of your ankle is your medial malleolus, and it lifts that up and out, and it lifts the inside of the knee out, and it picks you up through the pelvic floor. Yeah. So your arms and your head are an integral part of that process. Because if your head is forwards and down, and we're dropping through the ribs, and the arms are hanging off the front of the body. And we can talk about this in standing all day long, and we might be there going, well, I don't think I stand like that much. You probably don't. But you do when you sit down. So whenever we're sitting, we're thinking about, and this is your homework, whenever we're sitting down, we're thinking about the shoulder blades coming together on the back of the body. So that's going to change everything. So when the arms come up over the head, again, we're using the arms as a connection. So the shoulders don't actually come up towards the ears, because the shoulder blade goes down the back of the body. We get a nice length, we'll get a nice spacing through between the individual ribs, and then the ribs start to lift off the waist. So we use the arms to create space in the spine. And it's really important that we do, because your arms are buttoned in at every vertebrae between the back of your head and the back of your pelvis. So actually the orientation of your arms gives you the ability to lock down or free up your spine as your posture allows. This is good. So with that front foot, be any front foot. In fact, if you've been on that front foot for a while, change it over again. We're thinking about behind the balls of the feet and that central part of the foot. When we start this work, we're a little bit closed off from the central part of the foot. We're very interested in the very, very back of the heel, and we've got toes on the other end that we paint, but what's going on in the middle tends to get a little bit left behind. So we want to let the body weight go in there. If it's nice to have the arms, if it's nice to hold the hands so that the arms wrap around the back, it's great. And all we're going to do is we're just going to pull down through that front foot. Because we know when we pull down through the front foot, sends the leg up into the side of the waist. And we can just keep pulling down through that front of the foot, let the tail lift. Just get pulling down through the front of the foot, let the front of the hip slide into the top of the leg. So it may be that we can keep coming forwards with the pull down. The question is, what happens to my body if I keep pulling down through the front foot? And actually, just because it's physics, if I keep pulling down through the front foot and I leave the back leg where it is, it may come off the floor. It might not if everything's feeling exceptionally wobbly. And it definitely doesn't if we start to try to do a shape here, because then we get all caught up in the glutes and the back of the body, and we start bracing again. So it's a game. And the game is, how wobbly can I stay? Because we don't fear wobbles. How wobbly can I stay as I pull the foot down into the ground. And what you'll find is you'll get a lot of this sort of a stuff going on. And this is why we don't fear the wobble, because as we're coming in here, this is your body looking for the unbraced approach. And it's hard work. It's hard work on the tissues, hard work for muscles that aren't used to this work. So we keep swapping over, we give that one a break, and the shin can just chill out for a minute. And we just come in again, and we just keep pulling down through that front foot, pulling down through the front foot. We're looking for space in the ankles, space in the back of the knee, space in the hip. So as we come in, again, we've got that lovely long leg in the waist, gives us space. And then, you know, if you want to get a little bit tech with it, it's interesting to notice how much the back heel, not quite sure which angle I need to be at for this one. So your back heel in will shift you through the hips like this. Your back heel out will shift you through the hips like this. And none of them is bad or wrong. We just don't want to make one of them favourite. Get off. My trusty assistant is misbehaving this morning. So it's just a pull down, but then it's noticing those compensatory patterns. The orientation of the heel, now we can feel how that affects the orientation in the hip and will affect the muscle firing sequence coming through the center of your body. So if you favor your glutes and you don't like this is not you personally, and you're not keen on using the central core system. So if we've had any surgical interventions in the abdomen, if we've had any disc issues, all of this stuff, then your brain is going to naturally want to bypass that hurty bit. And that's why coming in with the pulling down through the foot is so important, because we're not forcing anybody in the chain to do anything that they're not ready for yet. So when we just follow that pull down through the foot, and we can pause, and if it's nice to keep the toes on the ground at the back, then do, because again, the toe on the ground at the back is still connecting with the floor, reconnecting through the hip, reconnecting into the waist. So if the cost to taking the foot off the floor is a drop through the waist, it's too much. So we keep coming back. And again, if you're working with the shoulders and they don't like to stay on the back of the body, or if we get very excited about where we think we're going and the head starts to come forward, so we like to look at the floor. You're going on the naughty step in there. We just keep that pull down and we keep that pausing. Remember, you know, Pete Blackaby talks about this a lot. We're going through it like an old cine film, frame by frame by frame by frame by frame. And if we get to a frame where suddenly it's all gone a bit sideways, we come back a few frames. We start again. Or we might get frustrated with it and go, I can't blooming do it. Done that one before. We change out and come back into a different side. You know, we've got to see if we can lose the idea of shapes and achieving movements. Because achieving shapes and movements comes at a cost, and we have to decide whether the cost is going to be too high. So we're going to have a side that is not as keen, and there's going to be all sorts of bracing malarkey going on there, or swinging out to the side. Can we keep the legs feeding back through the pelvis into the deep waist? If you happen to have a wall behind you, you can stick your foot on, it's even better. This is good. So we're going to come down to sitting, give the legs a nice shake. Come down to sitting if you've got any space left on your mat. Yes. You've now taken up half So have the sofa or the wall behind you, have the cushion underneath your sit bones, whatever feels good. And again, we're always looking for the sit bones pulling down into the ground. And you might find that it's a little bit softer here because of the work that we've been doing, that there's a little bit more space between the sit bone and the thigh bone. And just like we were doing when we were moving ourselves backwards and forwards in our nervous system thing, it's that kind of a pull of the heel down into the ground. And then we can let the back of the knee, again, heavy, heavy, heavy. Heel pulls down, back of the knee can open because the femur bones, the thigh bones, going back into the hips. The pull of the heel takes the shin bone down and away towards the wall in front of you. And again, we can use the hands to create that nice feedback loop of the arms coming through the shoulders, and then the shoulder blades can come together at the back. Find the big toes. Big toes pull forwards, which again will wake up the inside of the calf, the inside of the thighs, come through the groins and start to feel the inner workings of the low spine. You know, it's a tricky one to feel because there's not a lot of nerve receptors in there, but when we find that pull down of the heels, when we find that connection of the thigh bones back through the hips, there's a deep in and upward lift into the deep waist, into the underside of the ribs, just like when we're in standing. It's that feedback of the legs pulling down into the ground that gives us that lift out of the waist. And it's not the shoulders, so I'm going to put mine back where they should be. So we're going to take the hands and just rest them underneath the chin. Come around this way. And we're just resting the jaw onto the back of the hands. And then using the back of the hands, we're going to smooth up and back towards the top of the wall behind you. And we're bringing the shoulder blades together on the back of the body at the same time. And we're feeling, because your arms are connected all the way down to the base of your ribs, we stay here with the pull down through the heels, so we're going in the two directions at the same time, that we start to feel the divide at the base of the ribs and the top of the lumbars. The top of the body needs to look after itself, and it does that through the head alignment and the arms. So your arms wrap around your ribs, and the whole lot can lift up and back, pulls us back in from that V at the ribs, costal margin, and then it allows the low spine to drop. And the pelvis gets super heavy and the heels get super heavy. So we keep kind of just, you know, it's always moving. You know, it's not this sort of static slumping that we get ourselves into, and I'm acutely aware of it this week because I start off with the best of intentions with my posture, and you know it barely lasts 15-20 minutes before, you know, I'm looking at the book and everything's collapsed completely. This is how we are. So we have to keep bringing ourselves back, the front of the body into the back of the body, support the spine, and then let the spine go in the two directions, which gives us space and upward lift, and it fires all the muscles. This is good. So we're going to bring the feet in, because Margaret asked a really important question. So pains in the knee, particularly on this sort of upper side here, or upper outside here. We want to come back to the foot. So we can take hold just above the ankle bones, and we give the foot a nice woggle, technical term. So make sure that it's not the brain that's giving the foot a woggle. This one isn't it. Is can we really disengage brain? It's a great one to do while you're watching the TV, because yeah, you were distracted by the telly. And then we're going to put that foot back down, and we're just going to take 3 fingers, and we've got a bony side on the shin, and we've got a squashy side on the shin. So we want to stay squashy side of the shin bone. You'll know when you've got it. And all we're doing is we're just moving the tissues backwards and forwards through the squashy side of the shin. And we're going to follow that bone all the way up. And it will take you, initially it will take you straight up the center of the shin, but then it's going to take you towards the outer side of the knee. You can follow the tissues there. And then we just make nice circly movements just on that outer side of the knee joint there. And you might find that tissue's a little bit stiff or a little bit sore. Go gently. Little and often gently is much better than, you know, just battering the whatsits out of it once a week. And we'll change over sides. So again, we're holding just above the ankle bones. So we've got a nice woggly foot. One foot might be more woggly than the other. Gently, SJ, that will come off if you whack it that hard. So yes, we want to soften the retinacular. No, we don't want to try and disconnect our whole foot from the rest of our body. And then just taking the fingers, and again just finding that got a bony side and a squashy side. 2 sides will be different, of course they are. If the 2 sides are markedly different, go back to your teeth cleaning pose and really notice when you're standing more heavily on one foot than the other. We want to see if, you know, yes, we do our teeth cleaning pose in the morning, but things like when we're standing in the queue at the supermarket, when we're standing in the kitchen, we're cooking, you know, when the brain is distracted, we go back into our old compensatory patterns. So just notice when there's a point, you know, I would stand heavily into my right side when I'm chatting to people, because that's my propping side. So noticing that, and then can I bring myself into more of the center line? And we want to be checking that stuff. So, and you'll notice it here. So if you've got one side that's different to the other, then we want to go back into that. Can we feel those 2 sides of the body? Make nice circles here. Good. So we're just going to take a few breaths. So if it's nice, you can do laying, or if you're comfortable sitting, do sitting. And we're just going to bring the fingers around the ribs, thumbs at the back if you can. We're breathing into the thumbs at the back. We want to send the thumbs back towards the wall behind you, or back down into the floor. And then we're filling the palms with the ribs. You get more feedback when you're laying on the floor than you do when you're sitting. Neither way is right or wrong, but one just give, because you've got the floor there as a guide, you get more feedback. So you're looking to find that point where, and this is a practice, not perfect. You breathe into the thumbs at the base, and the thumbs get pulled back, pushed back towards the floor or the wall behind you. Then you fill the palms. So we're going out to the sides. That's kind of the first stage at the smile at the base of the ribs. But if we keep breathing, the breath will come up through the lungs and it will push the shoulder blades out of the way. And the breath out, we feel shoulder blades can drop. That's kind of the first phase. And the second phase, the ribs come back into the spine. So important, because these are, you know, the accessory muscle, the extra muscles for your breathing line each side of the spine. They encase the spine really, but the important accessory muscles for breathing are your QL, those big meaty muscles on the back, psoas laying on the front. Your diaphragm blends into that. So when we're thinking about how our feet present to the floor, when we're thinking about how our legs connect into the deep waist and that central core system, when we say that the whole lot's capped off by the diaphragm, then it follows that how we breathe has a deep impact on how our central core system functions, which then affects how our feet present to the floor. We start to see the joining of the dots a little bit. And if it's not quite there yet, just let it wash over you, because we'll say it, you know, I'll say it again and again and again when we start to build this picture of the whole and connected body. So how much our ribs move, how much we can push the shoulder blades out of the way on the in-breath, how much the shoulder blades can descend, how much the ribs can come in towards the spine, and how much length potential the spine is then given on that out breath. It all tones the pelvic floor. It all tones the corset of the waist. It does tone the pelvic floor as well. It's really interesting. When I was young and I did my training, I was going to an open day before I started my teacher training, and I went to a class with the chap who was going to then, you know, he was going to be my tutor for the next 4 years. And he's a breath and meditation guy, doesn't do hardly any physical movement at all. So what we would call, you know, yoga postures. And I go into this class and they're all sat there with washboard abs. And I think, gosh, they must do some really heavy-handed posture work here. They didn't do any posture work. The washboard abs were simply breathing. So all it was, the tone to these, the people that had been doing these long-term breathing practices, the tone to the corset of the waist was phenomenal. You'd think they were doing like 100 million sit-ups per day, and they weren't. They were just all sitting around cross-legged doing breathing. And it was such a lesson, because we're kind of pushed down this route of core strength, you know, crunches and all of these other bits and pieces. And actually walking properly as a body-wide event, so getting your gait cycle in check, connecting the legs through into the waist, and then appropriate breathing is we already have everything inbuilt. There's no gym membership required. This is good. So we're going to give the fingers and toes a little wiggle and make some rotations with the wrists and the ankles. And then if you're laying, just taking the legs long and the arms up over the head for a nice stretch through the body. And then we're going to bring the knees up to the chest, give the knees a nice hug, have a little rock from side to side. Coming over onto whichever side is comfortable for you. And returning up to, back up to sitting in your own time. Just taking a moment to check in with yourself. And notice how your body feels. This is good. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you, Kaz.
You're very welcome.